Okay, I'm back. This is a little bit more about cross contour in relationship to your assignment. The assignment is to draw the place you sleep, your bed, sleeping bag, whatever it is, and use cross contour lines as I was just demonstrating in the last video. So a sort of grid of lines as if they are actually touching the form. So it's going to be a kind of distorted grid that shows you the shape of the objects that you're looking at. As I said in that assignment, if you want to use half a sheet instead of the full 18 by 24 inch sheet, you're welcome to do that. Be aware, if you're going to use other size or shapes of paper, the proportions will not be the same as our 18 by 24. So you'll need to make, if you're going to continue to use a viewing frame, which I invite you to do for as long as you find it useful, you'll need to just make a new viewing frame. If you go back, I don't remember if it's assignment 5 or assignment 6, but I believe it's one of those two. There are instructions for making a viewing frame. It's relatively simple, and you end up just cutting out a rectangular window that is the same proportion as your drawing paper, and then you can cut the rest. If it's a rectangular small window on a big sheet, you can of course just trim the rest of the paper down until you have a size of viewing frame that you're comfortable with. Okay, one thought that I didn't include in the last drawing, and then another thought that is optional, but I think some of you are going to want to do it. So right now, if you can draw those kinds of cross contour marks over every surface in the drawing, the bedclothes, things on the bed, things behind and around the bed, that's it. You will have done the assignment. That's the main thing. However, I know some of you are sort of champing at the bit to start to deal with light and dark, and cross contour is an interesting way of doing that. So I'm going to give a very, very brief introduction into how you can use light and dark with cross contour, and a couple of the things to think about when we are using value being that range of tones from the black of the blackest charcoal to the white of the whitest paper, and all the grays in between. Again, it's totally optional. But I have one more thought in relationship to this that I didn't mention, which is, this is a familiar term to some of you, cross-hatching. And I wanted to make clear the cross-hatching is in a lot of ways like cross contour, because it involves, lines crossing. But it is different in an important way. And that is that cross-hatching generally is lines crossing to create a sort of dark area. It's not depicting anything. It's not important that the lines are actually showing us the shape of a surface that they're on. That's the difference. Cross contour, the line is actually always right on the surface and helping us understand the shape of the form. Okay, again, what I'm about to do is totally optional. You could just turn it off right now. I'm going to repeat all of this next week when we're actually dealing with tone. But if you want to use cross contour line to start to bring in a sense of light and dark, let's think a little bit about how that might work. First of all, when you're drawing with tone, I'm going to draw a little light source here. You have to have a primary light source, or, well, okay, I'm not going to argue with myself. Yes, I'll say you have to. And so that means the main light source, the strongest light, you need to be conscious of where that's coming from. So if you, in this assignment, want to try and do that, or any assignment, it's going to be very helpful if you can kind of control the light in the situation. If you have a desk lamp and it's a dark, otherwise dark room, then that would be great. If it's a reasonably dark room and you're next to a window, a large window with a lot of light raking in, that should work. Even if you go outside, the sun, although the sun will move as a light source if you work for very long, the sun is always a very strong main source of light, and it's very easy to look and see, okay, this is where my light is coming from. So you need to be able to answer that question. Where is the light coming from? Then you're going to find, I'll just draw the same thing I used as our demo last time, this sort of sphere. Remember, I drew this. I started to imagine some cross contour lines going across the surface, and to imagine a tabletop, and it had some cross contour lines going across that surface as well. Okay. With a light source, a primary light source, you're going to have these areas that are called highlights. Where the light is striking most directly, maybe even back over here, right? So this light, I probably should have had the arrow coming from the light, but this light, this is going to be a highlight area over here. Then there are shadows. This would be called a core shadow or a crest shadow in areas where the light is not heading directly or where the light is blocked from hitting. If it's really blocked from hitting, it's going to be particularly dark shadow. Now notice I'm doing cross contour marks. I'm mostly sticking with that same grid, but I found myself putting some little diagonal ones in there. As you get more comfortable, you realize that as the cross contour lines go over and tell you the story of the surface, they can actually end up going in a lot of directions. That's something that will really come with experience. It's probably best to stick with the grid, the horizontal and vertical lines going around the form. So this would be called a crest shadow or the core shadow sometimes, a main shadow on a form. There are other little things here that with reflected light and things we'll talk about next time. The big thing I want to bring up here that we've not dealt with before is what's called a cast shadow. So if an object is blocking light from another object, then you're going to get a cast shadow, right? And again, I'm drawing the tabletop. Notice the lines are actually cross contours on the tabletop. Shadows do not have any physical existence. They're always on something. It's falling on top of the bed. It's falling on top of your hand. It's falling on a tabletop. So you see how this is working. We have few or even no cross contour marks in the areas where the highlights are, and you have more in the shadow areas and the darkest areas, like where the object contacts the table. You have a whole lot. So this is a way that you can start to use to find the areas of light and dark by simply using cross contour lines. And the cross contour lines, you put more of them in the shadow areas. You put more of them in the dark areas and fewer of them or none of them in the highlight areas. Again, totally optional for this drawing. Some of you have done some of this before and want to get involved with tone. That's kind of who I'm talking to in this one. So you feel free to just ignore this and draw, like the drawings we were doing earlier for this homework assignment. I hope this isn't confusing. I'm just kind of trying to introduce this since I know some of you are going to be tempted to use tone, and cross contour is actually a really nice way of bringing in tone.